Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
At this moment, Feng Yu's pupils were wide open, and he was carried upwards by inertia. The energy in his body was annihilated in an instant, and the ninefold sword realm disappeared without a trace, and the 9 sword lights displayed by the sword skill, 9 Suns Demon Sword, also disappeared. Feng Yu was completely silent. Call. Facing Feng Yu, who was flying up due to inertia, Zishang put away the guqin in his hand, moved his body, and slowly stepped aside. Feng Yu rushed upwards for a while. Then his speed gradually slowed down and finally stopped. After coming to a standstill, Feng Yu's body fell down and hit the cage of the prison fighting field with a bang. He then followed the footsteps of Yi Lu of the Yi family and was hung on it. Unlike Yi Lu, although Feng Yu was dead, there was not even a trace of blood on his body, as if he had died instantly. What's going on? For a moment, the entire prison fighting arena was in chaos. Of course, those who are making a fuss now are those with weaker cultivation. Can anyone tell me, is this a fucking show? Zishang just played the piano, and Feng Yu died? And there's no blood? Killing without spilling blood, isn't that Feng Yu's style? Now he's been killed, and surprisingly, no blood was seen. Is this his retribution? Is Feng Yu really dead? Why does it feel so fake? Have you ever seen someone kill someone just by playing the piano? Many spectators couldn't help but look at Feng Yu's body hanging on the cage in the prison fighting arena with questioning eyes. Feng Yu is indeed dead. At this time, one of the old men who was in charge of the second round of selection above the prison fighting arena opened his mouth and announced. The audience naturally would not doubt the old man's words. Really dead? Isn't this Zishang too terrifying? He killed Feng Yu just by playing the piano. This Zishang. Not only does it kill without shedding blood, it also kills without leaving any trace. That's right. Even Feng Yu had to use a sword to kill people. But this Zishang, it's like he doesn't need any weapons at all. He can kill people without even being noticed. Many spectators were whispering to each other, and when they looked at Zishang above the prison fighting arena again, there was a hint of fear in their eyes. Of course, not everyone thinks the same way as these viewers. The reason why these audiences felt that Zishang killed people invisibly was, after all, because their cultivation was low, which resulted in their poor eyesight, and they could not catch any trace of Zishang's attack. Just now, almost all warriors who had entered the 9th level of the Void Realm and above could see it clearly. At the moment when Zishang plucked the strings of the zither, the yuanli that flashed from his fingertips, combined with the 2 artistic concepts, merged into it, turning into an extremely swift yuanli inch light, which immediately killed Feng Yu. Because the yuanli kunmang was very small and thin and moved very fast, it did not leave any obvious marks on Feng Yu's body after penetrating it. As for the blood, there was no way it would flow out. This is similar to Feng Yu's previous method of killing people, both of which were to kill without shedding blood. The 4th grade spiritual sword in Feng Yu's hand was one of those incredibly thin swords. Killing people without being seen, they actually thought of that. Hearing the discussions of the audience in the prison fighting arena, Duan Lingtian shook his head, thinking that these audiences were too naive. Duan Lingtian, just now, did Zishang kill Feng Yu by releasing his energy? Suli took a deep breath and asked. Although he was an 8th level warrior in the Void Realm, he had only seen the yuanli appearing from Zishang's fingertips and the yuanli merging into the strings. After Zishang plucked the strings, that tiny strand of energy completely disappeared from his sight. He guessed that it must have rushed out to attack Feng Yu. Duan Lingtian nodded. Just now, he used his yuanli to combine the wind state of mind and the fire state of mind, leveraging the amplifying power of the 4th grade spiritual harp. He condensed a small, thin yuanli inch ray, which was ejected from the strings of the spiritual harp and shot Feng Yu to death. This is similar to the bow and arrow. The inch-long yuanli is an arrow. The spiritual zither is the bow, and the strings are the bow strings. I never imagined that Zishang's strength was so formidable. Like you, he's also comprehended two realms of mind. Duan Lingtian. Can you tell what level he's reached in comprehending the realm of wind and the realm of fire respectively? After hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Suli took a breath and finally couldn't help asking curiously. I can't tell. Duan Lingtian shook his head slightly. In that instant, he made his move. The ancient horned dragon phantom, in the strange phenomenon of heaven and earth, had no time to fully condense and form before it dissipated again. Zishang's attack just now was as fast as the speed he used to kill Yi Lu. I never thought that Zishang's strength would reach such a level today. Looking at Zishang, Duan Lingtian's eyes were extremely complicated. Although, when he and Zishang had a 2-year agreement battle, Zishang's cultivation was far superior to his. But because his mental strength was stronger than Zishang, and he had the soul skill Thousand Illusions to rely on, he was still able to play Zishang with ease. Later, he encountered many good fortunes along the way, and thought he could leave Zishang far behind. Who would have thought that Zishang's circumstances in recent years seemed to be no worse than his? The scene before him was beyond his expectations. Fengyu. In an audience seat to the west, the expressions of several high-ranking officials of the Yinshin sect changed. They never expected that the chief disciple of their Yinshin sect would die here, and was killed by a single blow without any ability to fight back. You can imagine. From today onwards, their Yinshin sect will become a laughingstock in the Han dynasty. Several high-ranking officials of Yinshin sect looked at each other and finally made a decision. They took Fengyu's body and left the prison arena. Before leaving, they looked at Zishang with eyes filled with extreme murderous intent. The Yinshin sect is not a famous and upright sect, and has always used any means to achieve its goals. Today, Zishang killed the chief disciple of Yinshin sect, bringing shame to Yinshin sect. This undoubtedly offended Yinshin sect, and Yinshin sect would not let it go. Although Zishang was a member of the royal family of the Han dynasty, it was impossible for him to be protected by the powerful royal family for his entire life. As long as they find an opportunity, they will kill Zishang. Yinshin sect. Looking at the receding backs of several high-ranking members of the Yinshin sect, Zishang narrowed his eyes, and a cold light flashed across them. Obviously, Zishang had heard of the name of Yinshin sect a long time ago. Duan Lingtian, I'm looking forward to fighting you. Before Zishang left the sky above the prison fighting arena, he locked his gaze on Duan Lingtian and spoke in a concentrated voice using his Yuanli. This was also the first time Zishang communicated with Duan Lingtian after several years. I'm looking forward to it too. I hope you won't run away like a lost dog like last time. Duan Lingtian grinned and replied bluntly with his Yuanli condensed voice. You? Humph. I won't play tricks on you. Duan Lingtian's words made Zishang recall the past that he couldn't bear to look back on, and his face changed, but soon, his face calmed down again, as if he had regained his composure in an instant. Seeing the change in Zishang's expression, Duan Lingtian's eyes showed a hint of fear. If Zishang continued to be angry, he wouldn't feel anything. But Zishang calmed down so quickly, which made Duan Lingtian realize that the current Zishang was no longer the same Zishang as before. Zishang is even more terrifying now. After a moment, Zishang withdrew his gaze from Duan Lingtian and moved back to the upper-class audience seats exclusively for the royal family of the Han dynasty. Zishang, I never thought you'd become so strong. Even here might not be your opponent today. The emperor of the Han dynasty said to Zishang with a smile, not sparing any words of praise. Your Majesty, thank you for the compliment. Zishang said neither arrogantly nor humbly. Bai He, who was sitting next to him, had an expression as ugly as it could be. His father's words were like sharp needles, piercing his heart and making him furious. Is he not as good as Zishang? Zishang, I will soon prove to my father that you are no match for me. Bai He looked at Zishang and spoke in a deep voice with his Yuanli concentrated on his tone. Zishang glanced at Bai He calmly, and then, changing his previous humility, he replied with Yuanli's concentrated voice. As evil as you are, Angzi, I don't know why you keep targeting me like this, but I still want you to know that if you fight me, I will not hold back. What? You think you can beat me if you don't hold back? Bai Heyuan sneered in a condensed voice. However, this time, Zishang ignored Bai He and looked at the old man in black. Master, Zishang did not embarrass you. Well, the old man was very satisfied with Zishang's performance and took the initiative to invite Zishang to sit down. Brother, congratulations. Ziyin excitedly congratulated Zishang, her beautiful face radiant with energy, attracting even more attention. Zishang smiled and nodded, his eyes full of pity and love as he looked at Ziyin. Now, is there anyone who is still unwilling to challenge the young talent who has reached the 9th level of the Void Realm? Above the prison fighting arena, one of the two old men in charge of presiding over the Dynasty Martial Arts competition spoke again, and his voice spread throughout the prison fighting arena. For a moment, except for Feng Tianwu who was still practicing with his eyes closed, the remaining 11 young talents at the 7th and 8th levels of the Void Realm all kept their mouths shut. What a joke! At this time, who among them dares to disobey? Yi Lu and Feng Yu could be said to be the best among them, but they were both killed because they refused to submit and died at the hands of two seemingly weakest young talents who were at the 9th level of the Void Realm. They had no doubt that if anyone among them dared to provoke the young talents of the 9th level of the Void Realm, they would definitely follow in the footsteps of Yi Lu and Feng Yu. What a pity! With Feng Yu's strength, he should have definitely qualified to participate in the 10 Dynasties martial arts competition. It's not just Feng Yu. Even if Yi Lu hadn't died, he would still have been able to qualify to participate in the 10 Dynasties martial arts competition. They destroyed themselves. In the end, none of the remaining 12 young talents refused to submit. Since no one has any objections, then I declare that the second round of selections begins now. Above the prison fighting arena, the old man announced again. Suddenly, except for Su Li, the eyes of the other two young talents who had entered the 8th level of the Void Realm lit up. In their opinion, two young talents at the 8th level of the Void Realm who were stronger than them were both dead, and now there are only 3 young talents at the 8th level of the Void Realm left, including them. This time, there are 4 spots left for participating in the 10 Dynasties martial arts competition, in addition to the 6 young talents who have entered the 9th level of the Void Realm taking up 1 spot each. It is not difficult for them to get a place. Tianwu is still practicing? As the second round of selection was about to begin, Duan Lingtian's gaze pierced through the void and finally landed on the upper-class audience seats exclusively for the Feng family. In fact, as early as when he tried to kill Yi Lu, he deliberately glanced at Feng Tianwu a few times. Of course, his main purpose was to find out whether Feng Tianwu had placed a bunch of low-grade yuanshi as a bet on him. When he saw Feng Tianwu practicing with her eyes closed, he knew that this girl definitely didn't place a bet. At this moment, after Duan Lingtian's gaze fell on Feng Tianwu for a moment, Feng Tianwu suddenly opened her eyes, as if by some uncanny coincidence, and a gleam of light flashed in them. Tianwu seems to have changed. Duan Lingtian, who had wanted to look away, looked at Feng Tianwu a few more times after he found that she had woken up. This time, he saw some clues. Tianwu, you have made a breakthrough? Considering that there were many strong people in the upper-class audience seats, and there might be an inscription master who was proficient in mental power, Duan Lingtian did not use mental power to explore Feng Tianwu's cultivation level, but asked with Yuanli condensed voice. Feng Tianwu, who had just woken up, hadn't had time to suppress her surprise when she heard Duan Lingtian's energy-condensed voice and couldn't help but respond with a hum. Really? Duan Lingtian took a breath of cold air. Once again, he was shocked by the talent of the owner of the fire spirit body. Tianwu, this girl, is different from him. He has the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor and a series of encounters that have led to his current achievements. However, Tianwu only has the fire spirit body to rely on. Most importantly, Tianwu is younger than him. Soon, Feng Tianwu regained consciousness. After hearing what had just happened from Old Kong, her beautiful face changed slightly. She looked at Duan Lingtian in panic. Her yuanli condensed into a voice that said, "Brother Duan, I'm sorry. I was practicing and didn't help you place the bet." "No rush." Duan Lingtian shook his head lightly and said unconcernedly, "There will be plenty of opportunities later." Before Feng Tianwu could respond, the old man above the prison fighting arena spoke again. "The purpose of the second round of selection is to determine the final 4 from the remaining 12. Together with the 6 talented young men of the 9th level of the Void Realm, they will qualify to participate in the 10 Dynasties martial competition." Having said this, the old man began to talk about the qualifications for the second round of selection. The second round of selection is a freestyle challenge. 12 young talents, including Su Li and Feng Tianwu, stepped into the air and did not gather together. Instead, they each stood in the air in front of their respective audience seats. For a time, the 12 young talents became the focus of everyone's attention. Freestyle challenge. Any one of you may take the lead and challenge the other. Regardless of the outcome, the two can rest for a round. The second person to initiate the challenge may not challenge the two who just challenged each other again. Continue this challenge until the 4 strongest ones emerge. The old man said slowly. This freestyle challenge is quite good. It's hard for those without sufficient strength to pass it. Duan Lingtian thought secretly. Almost at the moment the old man finished speaking, a young talent in the 8th level of the Void Realm flew out and was the first to arrive above the prison fighting arena. "Now please choose one of the other 11 and challenge him," the old man said to the young talent who had entered the 8th level of the Void Realm. "I challenge him." A young talent who had entered the 8th level of the Void Realm pointed at a young talent who had entered the 7th level of the Void Realm and said. Then, the two fought. Whether it is cultivation or the artistic conception of comprehension, the former is superior, and the result can be imagined. The young talent entering the 8th level of the virtual realm wins. After the battle, the young talent who entered the 8th level of the Void Realm died. Figures flew out one after another, challenging opponents they believed they could defeat, completely intensifying the atmosphere of the prison fighting arena. Whoosh. The first young talent who entered the 8th level of the Void Realm appeared again. This time, his gaze fell on the fiery red figure who had not appeared on stage until now. "Miss Tianwu, I'm sorry." The person he specifically challenged was Feng Tianwu. "It's Miss Tianwu. Isn't he too shameless?" He actually challenged Miss Tianwu. Miss Tianwu is more than 10 years younger than him. He's really cruel enough to destroy such a beautiful woman. For a moment, the audience around the prison fighting arena cursed. Any normal person will subconsciously sympathize with the weak, especially a stunning beauty like Feng Tianwu, who makes people feel pity from the bottom of their hearts. Take action. When facing outsiders, Feng Tianwu's face was cold and her tone was flat. She was completely different from when she faced Duan Lingtian. Offend. The young man took a deep breath and flew out. In his hand, a 4th-grade spiritual sword appeared, and his yuan power surged. The artistic conception of the sword followed him like a shadow, flying straight towards Feng Tianwu. Above the void, first the shadows of 11 ancient horned dragons appeared, and then the shadows of 7 ancient horned dragons appeared. Entering the 8th level of the virtual realm. The 7th level of Sword Realm. The strange phenomena in heaven and earth continued to change, until the young man swung his sword like lightning, and the phantoms of 6 ancient horned dragons appeared again, plus the phantoms of more than 3,000 ancient giant elephants. Buzz. The knife in the young man's hand instantly turned into knife shadows all over the sky, like densely packed falling meteors, aiming directly at Feng Tianwu. He attacked with all his strength, and the power contained in the sword was comparable to the strength of 24 ancient horned dragons and more than 3,000 ancient elephants. Facing the young man's sword shadows that were falling from the sky like a net, Feng Tianwu raised his hand slowly, and a long red whip appeared out of thin air in his hand. This long whip was exactly the third-grade spiritual weapon that Duan Lingtian had refined for her. Suddenly, the wind rose. The red dress on Feng Tianwu fluttered slightly, like a burning flame. At some point, in Feng Tianwu's hand holding the third-grade spirit whip, Yuanli began to bloom, and the artistic conception of fire appeared and then merged into the third-grade spirit whip. Above the void, the power of heaven and earth was turbulent. First, 11 phantoms of ancient horned dragons gathered together, and then 8 more phantoms of ancient horned dragons appeared. In the end, there appeared the phantoms of 7 ancient horned dragons and the phantoms of 7,000 ancient giant elephants, entering the 8th level of the virtual realm. The artistic conception of 8 fires. A third-grade spiritual weapon with a 70% amplification. This is Feng Tianwu's true strength at this moment. Call out. Feng Tianwu swung the third-grade spirit whip in his hand suddenly, and it rose up like a poisonous snake. The power contained in it was as much as that of 26 ancient horned dragons and 7,000 ancient giant elephants. Compared with the opponent, is it more than one step ahead? Including Feng Tianwu's opponents, most people in the prison fighting arena changed color when they saw the strange phenomenon in heaven and earth caused by Feng Tianwu's full strength. Before they could react, Feng Tianwu had already made her move. Call. Feng Tianwu moved, like a ball of fire sweeping out. Wherever she passed, there were bursts of air explosions, and the airwaves swept across the surrounding prison fighting field. For a moment, there was a strong wind in the prison fighting arena. Call out. Immediately afterwards, the spiritual whip in Feng Tianwu's hand moved, flew out of her hand, and turned into a red lightning, flying around her body. Because of the fast speed, a layer of crimson light shield seemed to form around Feng Tianwu's body, protecting Feng Tianwu inside. And at this moment, the sword light in the sky came like a shadow. Buzz, 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 buzz. The sword light fell like rain, hitting the red light shield around Feng Tianwu's body, making bursts of dull sounds, but ultimately failed to break the light shield. What Tianwu is performing now? Is it a defensive martial art that uses Yuanli combined with the spirit whip and the fire state of mind? This defensive martial art is quite new. Duan Lingtian was somewhat surprised upon seeing this scene. The attack of the young talent who had entered the 8th level of the Void Realm could not even break the red defensive shield on Feng Tianwu's body, let alone hurt Feng Tianwu. Soon, the sword shadows that were coming at him with great force gradually dissipated. Call out. The moment the crimson light shield around Feng Tianwu's body disappeared, the third-grade spirit whip returned to her hand. With a raise of her hand, she easily defeated the remaining knife shadows. I give up. Just as Feng Tianwu was about to attack, the young man came to his senses and hurriedly admitted defeat. For a moment, the people around the prison fighting arena who were stunned by Feng Tianwu's strength also came to their senses. Miss Tianwu is so strong. Yes, too strong. Not only has he reached the 8th level of the Void Realm, he has also comprehended the 8th level of the Fire Realm. What's even more surprising is, the long whip in her hand looks like a third-grade spiritual weapon. Miss Tianwu is a martial artist of the 8th level of the Void Realm. Regardless of her intentional state, she can unleash the power of 11 ancient horned dragons. The power amplified by a spiritual weapon is enhanced on this basis. And just now, the power amplified by Miss Tianwu's spiritual weapon reached the power of 7 ancient horned dragons, plus the power of 7,000 ancient giant elephants. In other words, the third-grade spiritual weapon in Miss Tianwu's hand can amplify power by 70%. The entire prison fighting arena was in complete chaos. Burning gazes converged on the crimson whip in Feng Tianwu's hand, as if the whip was more alluring than Feng Tianwu herself. A third-grade spiritual weapon with a 70% amplification? Even among third-grade spiritual weapons, it can be considered the best of the best. In the middle-level audience seats where the Blackstone Empire was located, Xiang Ying stood up from his seat, somewhat inappropriately. As one of the few fourth-grade weapon refiners in the Han Dynasty, Xiang Ying has a deep understanding of the art of weapon refinement. It was also because of this that he knew what a 70% increase in the power of a third-grade spiritual weapon meant. As the vice president of the Han Dynasty Equipment Refiners Association, Xiang Ying's understanding of the Equipment Refiners Group is not limited to the Han Dynasty and the surrounding dynasties. After all, the Equipment Refiner Guild also exists in that distant outside world. In fact, every few decades, the outside Weapon Refiners Guild would send special envoys to the Weapon Refiners Guild headquarters of the Han Dynasty to provide guidance on weapon refining. Those special envoys are usually at least third-grade weapon refiners. And every time before leaving the headquarters of the Han Dynasty Equipment Refiners Guild, those special envoys would leave behind a work, either a third-grade spiritual weapon or a second-grade spiritual weapon. The headquarters of the Equipment Refiners Guild of the Han Dynasty is also the only place in the Han Dynasty that has second-grade spiritual weapons. However, the spiritual weapons left behind by these special envoys cannot be used privately. Regardless of whether it is the second-grade spiritual weapon or the third-grade spiritual weapon of the Equipment Refiners Guild, not to mention the best of the best, even the best is not available. Most of the third-grade spiritual weapons collected by the Equipment Refiners Guild can only increase the power by 67%, and a few can increase it by 68%. But now, he saw a third-grade spiritual weapon here that could amplify 70%. How could he not be shocked? The last time a special envoy came was about 30 years ago. At that time, Xiang Ying was just a descendant of an ordinary family in the Han Dynasty. It is said that the special envoy claimed to be a top-notch third-grade weapon refiner, but the third-grade spiritual weapon he refined could only increase the power by 68%. Also, the third-grade spiritual weapon in Miss Tianwu's hand. When did the Feng family have a third-grade spiritual weapon? When his mood gradually calmed down, Xiang Ying frowned, a little confused. As far as he knew, even the patriarch of the Feng family, Feng Wudao, only had one top-grade fourth-grade spiritual weapon that could amplify power by 59%. Now, Feng Wudao's daughter had such a third-grade spiritual weapon in her hands, which made him really confused. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. He turned his head slightly and glanced at the purple-clothed young man sitting quietly in a seat behind him. Could it be because of brother Duan Lingtian? Duan Lingtian knew that there was a third-grade weapon refiner behind him. Therefore, considering the relationship between Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu, he guessed that the third-grade spiritual weapon in Feng Tianwu's hand was most likely refined by the third-grade weapon refiner behind Duan Lingtian. The more I think about it, the more certain I become. However, he didn't point it out for the time being, because he wanted to further confirm if the third-grade spiritual weapon in Miss Tianwu's hand really came from Brother Lingtian. Then Brother Lingtian must also have a third-grade spiritual weapon in his hand. In addition to Xiang Ying, there were also many weapon refiners present. Now, their eyes were fixed on the third-grade spirit whip in Feng Tianwu's hand, as if they couldn't wait to rush up and snatch it away to keep it for themselves. However, when they thought of Feng Wudao behind Feng Tianwu, they all seemed to be poured with cold water and completely lost their temper. No one in the Han Dynasty dared to question Feng Wudao's strength. The third-grade spiritual weapon in Feng Tianwu's hand caused a wave of enthusiasm in the prison fighting arena. Most people, including the two old men who presided over the selection, were shocked. If anyone present was relatively calm, that could only be Feng Tianwu herself, Duan Lingtian, Feng Wudao, and Kong Lao. Because they knew it beforehand, they were not surprised. Big brother. The Feng family patriarch looked at Feng Wudao with a somewhat awkward expression, his voice trembling, the third-grade spiritual weapon in Tianwu's hand. That was a gift given to Tianwu by a third-rank weapon refiner out of respect for my son-in-law. Feng Wudao said slowly. Son-in-law? When Feng Wudao said this, not only the head of the Feng family, but also other senior members of the Feng family and Feng Yunxiang were stunned. Then, their eyes all fell on the middle-level audience seats where the people from the Blackstone Empire were sitting. To be precise, it fell on the young man in purple. This Duan Lingtian has a third-grade weapon refiner behind him? For a moment, several people in the Feng family were shocked. They originally thought that Duan Lingtian was able to become Feng Wudao's son-in-law because he was lucky, and they all thought that Duan Lingtian was marrying above their status in the Feng family. But now, they don't think so anymore. What a joke. With a third-grade weapon refiner behind him, even the emperor of the Han dynasty would probably be eager to marry his princess to him, right? Duan Lingtian immediately noticed the burning gazes of the Feng family members. He quickly guessed what was going on and hurriedly used his energy to condense his voice, which was transmitted into the ears of Feng Wudao and Kong Lao. Uncle Feng, Kong Lao, are you going to sell me out like this? Haha. Brother Duan, the young master didn't sell you out. He just said that there is a third-grade weapon refiner behind you. There was a smile in the sound of Master Kong's Yuanli. Duan Lingtian breathed a sigh of relief after hearing this. That's fine. If the news that he was a third-grade weapon refiner got out, it was conceivable that he would become the target of public criticism. He didn't like the feeling of being treated like a monkey. A third-grade spiritual weapon with a 70% amplification. Where did the daughter of the Feng family get this spiritual weapon? The emperor of the Han dynasty looked a little solemn. Even the royal family of the Han dynasty only had one third-grade spiritual weapon, and it could only amplify power by 67%. Compared with the one in Feng Tianwu's hand, it was simply garbage. In the Han dynasty, only our royal family possesses a single third-grade spiritual weapon that's publicly displayed. Of course, most people in the know that the Han dynasty's Artifact Refiners Guild has quite a few third-grade spiritual weapons, and even second-grade spiritual weapons. The old man in black murmured, could it be that the third-grade spiritual weapon in the hands of the Feng family's daughter came from the Weapon Refiners Guild? Won't. The emperor shook his head and said with certainty, among the 3-grade spiritual weapons in the Equipment Refiners Guild, there aren't any that can be called top grade, with a 69% amplification, let alone the best of the best with a 70% amplification. Moreover, the spiritual weapons of the Equipment Refiners Guild cannot be misappropriated without permission, not even by the Feng family members, not even by the president. So, the third-grade spiritual weapon in the hands of the Feng family's daughter was obtained from somewhere else. The old man in black couldn't help but gasp. It seems that Feng Wudao has most likely been to the outside world and met a third-grade weapon refiner. That's possible. The emperor nodded, then sighed. Such a spiritual weapon in the hands of an 8th-level warrior in the Void Realm. It's truly a waste of talent. Bai Hao, Zishang, and Ziyan, who were sitting beside them, all agreed with this. Snort. As for the second prince Bai he looked unhappy. He was the second prince of the Han dynasty, but he didn't even have a third-grade spiritual weapon in his hand, while now a little girl had a third-grade spiritual weapon in her hand, which made him very angry. Call. Above the prison fighting arena, Feng Tianwu put away the third-grade spiritual whip that everyone was paying attention to, returned to the upper-class audience seats where the Feng family members were, and stood in the air. Now, the other 10 people can challenge again. The old man who presided over the second round of selection reacted and reminded loudly. Perhaps they were unable to recover from the shock just now, and the other 10 young talents did not react for a long time. Whoosh. In the end, it was Suli who came to his senses first, flew out, and arrived above the prison fighting arena. His eyes swept over the 9 young talents who were available for selection. Finally, he locked onto the only young talent among the 9 who had reached the 8th level of the Void Realm. It's you. At this moment, Lydia Su was still shocked. The daughter of the Feng family's master actually has a third-grade spiritual weapon, and it is a third-grade spiritual weapon with a 70% amplification. In terms of amplification power, it is far superior to the third-grade spiritual sword in his hand. Also, the defensive martial arts that the daughter of the Feng family had just displayed also shocked him inexplicably. It was a defensive martial art that could be performed with the help of a spiritual weapon, combined with yuanli and artistic conception. I heard from Master that only that level of defensive martial art could be perfectly performed with a spiritual weapon, but isn't it true that martial arts above the heaven level can only be activated by a state of mind above the intermediate level? This made Su Li puzzled. In fact, it was not just Su Li, even Duan Lingtian was puzzled. Because of what Master Su Li had told Su Li, Duan Lingtian also knew it clearly through the memory of the reincarnation Martial Emperor. Tianwu. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but concentrate his energy and asked, "The defensive martial arts you just used?" "Brother Duan, the defensive martial arts I just displayed was powerful, wasn't it?" Before Duan Lingtian could finish, Feng Tianwu interrupted him with her yuanly condensed voice, her words full of pride. "Sharp." Duan Lingtian nodded, then continued, "Tianwu, as far as I know, only defensive martial arts above the heavenly rank can be perfectly executed in conjunction with spiritual weapons. And the artistic realm you've currently comprehended shouldn't be enough to activate heavenly rank martial arts, right?" "Brother Duan, I'm not using a heaven-level martial art. This set of defensive martial arts was acquired by my father by chance. It's a high-level, earth-level defensive martial art that rivals heaven-level martial arts. The biggest feature is that it can be performed with the help of spiritual weapons." Feng Tianwu explained slowly. "I see." Duan Lingtian suddenly understood, but couldn't help but feel shocked. Generally, earth-level defensive martial arts, even when used in conjunction with spiritual weapons, cannot incorporate the power of amplification. Only heaven-level defensive martial arts can achieve this. Even the reincarnation Martial Emperor had never seen or heard of a high-level, earth-level defensive martial art that could be performed by relying on the power of spiritual weapons without comprehending the intermediate state of mind. "Brother Duan, if you are interested in this set of defensive martial arts, I can teach you. This set of defensive martial arts can be performed with any spiritual weapon and any state of mind." Feng Tianwu spoke to Duan Lingtian with her yuanly concentrated voice. Duan Lingtian felt a warmth rising in his heart upon hearing this, while his eyes were filled with complexity. The defensive martial arts that Feng Tianwu had just displayed might not be as good as the heaven-level defensive martial arts, but for someone who had not yet comprehended the intermediate state of mind, it was an extremely powerful martial art. Once this defensive martial art is used, it can almost always defeat anyone who is not much stronger than oneself. Moreover, this kind of martial arts is not even in the memory of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, which is enough to show its preciousness. Now, Feng Tianwu wanted to teach him this set of martial arts in just a few words, which was enough to show how important he was in Feng Tianwu's heart. Need not. However, Duan Lingtian still rejected Feng Tianwu's kindness. It's not that he is so great, but he feels there is no need. If one wants to cultivate this kind of defensive martial arts to the level that Feng Tianwu displayed, it will take at least 3 to 2 years, even if one has a good understanding. Not to mention that Duan Lingtian didn't have much time to practice this kind of defensive martial arts. Even if he had time, he wouldn't practice. This was because his biggest goal at the moment was to successfully comprehend the intermediate wind realm before the 10 Dynasties martial arts competition began a year later. At that time, he could directly practice the many heavenly level martial arts in the memory of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, among which there were many heavenly level defensive martial arts that could be amplified by the power of spiritual weapons. Therefore, there is no need for him to waste time on this kind of defensive martial arts. Su Li. Soon, Duan Lingtian came back to his senses, and his gaze focused on the sky above the prison fighting arena. At this moment, Su Li was confronting another young talent who had reached the 8th level of the Void Realm. This young talent who had entered the 8th level of the Void Realm had already made a move once before. He had only comprehended the 7th level of artistic conception and could not pose any threat to Su Li. However, because Su Li has not yet truly demonstrated his strength, this young talent who has entered the 8th level of the Void Realm and is Su Li's opponent does not know Su Li's true background. Suddenly, Su Li's opponent took action. Whoosh! He flew out like an arrow shot from a strong bow, and in the blink of an eye he was in front of Su Li. Call out. As he raised his hand, a green sword light formed by Yuan Li and the artistic conception of the sevenfold sword suddenly appeared, as if it had turned into a poisonous green snake, biting Su Li fiercely. Die! Su Li's opponent roared angrily and pointed the sword in his hand at Su Li's throat, obviously wanting to kill the person who challenged him with one sword. Snort! Sensing the murderous intent on his opponent's sword, Su Li snorted coldly and then attacked. Call out. The same sword light came out of Su Li's hand effortlessly, but it contained a more powerful sword artistic conception, like a thorn in the bone, following the opponent's sword light like a shadow. At this moment, it was as if two poisonous snakes were about to bite each other. Some viewers with low cultivation levels hurriedly covered their ears when they saw this scene, fearing that the sound of the two spiritual swords clashing would break their eardrums. They soon realized that their worries were unnecessary. Call out. Another sharp sword whistle sounded. Immediately afterwards, the people present could clearly see that Su Li flew out, as if he had turned into a sharp sword that pierced through the void. When he and his sword were about to collide with the opponent's spiritual sword, he instantly moved to the side. The moment his opponent reacted, Su Li attacked again. Call out. The spiritual sword in Su Li's hand seemed to have eyes, and it flew straight towards the opponent. Phew! The next moment, a hideous bloody hole appeared on Su Li's opponent's throat, gushing out dazzling blood. After struggling for a few times, his body finally stiffened. After being carried away for a distance by inertia, Su Li's opponent stopped and fell down. Once again, a corpse was hung on the cage in the prison fighting arena. What a fast sword! As early as when Su Li attacked and killed his opponent, Duan Lingtian's pupils could not help but shrink, and his face was filled with horror. At that moment, he clearly saw Su Li performing an extremely pure sword skill. Sword skills are not fancy, but straightforward. When the sword is drawn, blood will be seen. This is similar to his sword drawing technique, but the sword skills displayed by Su Li are obviously much stronger than his sword drawing technique. Perhaps, I can only keep up with the speed of the sword skills Su Li just displayed by using the wind and thunder finger. Duan Lingtian thought secretly. If Su Li had killed his opponent with a third-rank spiritual sword, Duan Lingtian wouldn't have been so shocked. But the problem is that what Su Li used was only a 4th-grade spiritual sword. In terms of strength, he is only slightly better than the other party in terms of sword realm and has the power of an ancient horned dragon. With the power of an ancient horned dragon, he was able to kill his opponent in one encounter. This was incredible in the eyes of any warrior who had entered the Void Realm. But Su Li did it, using his pure, direct, and powerful sword skills. Another talented young man of the 8th level of the Void Realm has died. After everyone in the prison fighting arena came to their senses, they all sighed. This young swordsman seems to be from the Blackstone Empire. The people of the Blackstone Empire have really made a big splash this time. Yes, so far, Duan Lingtian is not the only one from the Blackstone Empire who has made it to the second round of selection. 2 others have also made it. In the second round, it's inevitable that Duan Lingtian and this young swordsman will advance. I just don't know if the remaining person will make it. That person seems to be a 7th level Void Realm warrior. I think it's doubtful. After all, after removing the 6 9th level young talents and the other 3 8th level young talents, There is only one spot left for the 10 Dynasties martial arts competition. 9 young talents of the 7th level of the Void Realm are competing for one spot. It's really a dicey situation. There was a lot of discussion around the prison fighting arena, and many people looked at Long Yun and shook their heads. Hearing these discussions, Long Yun's eyes were like knives, flashing with a cold light. He is determined to get the last spot. No. Today, he has to do more than that. Call. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Su Li returned to the air in front of the audience seats where all the people from the Blackstone Empire were and stood beside Long Yun. Su Li, congratulations. At this time, everyone in the Blackstone Empire, including King Yong, congratulated Su Li. Who's next to challenge? Soon, the old man's voice was heard again, striking the tense nerves of the other 9 young talents except Su Li and Feng Tianwu. Whoosh. A whistling sound suddenly sounded, and a young man appeared above the prison fighting arena. Long Yun. Duan Lingtian looked at Long Yun above the prison fighting arena and didn't think anything of it. But when he found that Long Yun's eyes were locked on the young man who had admitted defeat in front of Feng Tianwu before, who was at the 8th level of the Void Realm, he couldn't help but be shocked. Long Yun, you want to challenge this person across levels with your cultivation level of the 7th level of the Void Realm? At this moment, apart from anything else, Duan Lingtian felt a faint admiration for Long Yun's courage. This young talent, who has reached the 8th level of the Void Realm, possesses a sword art comparable to Long Yun's, but his cultivation is 1 level higher, possessing the power of an ancient horned dragon. Even if Long Yun uses a 3rd-rank spiritual sword, his power will at most be on par with his opponent. This battle is extremely dangerous for either of them. Long Yun dared to make such a choice. Either he is desperate to save face, or he is truly confident that he can defeat the other party. Duan Lingtian thought secretly. I challenge you. Finally, Long Yun spoke loudly while looking at the young talent of the 8th level of the Void Realm who admitted defeat in front of Feng Tianwu. For a moment, the originally noisy death fighting arena was dead silent. You want to challenge me? The young man challenged by Long Yun was stunned at first, then asked with some uncertainty. At this moment, he even thought that Long Yun had recognized the wrong person. I'm not just going to challenge you. I'm going to kill you. Long Yun slowly grinned. An evil smile appeared on his face, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Wow. Long Yun's reply was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, making the quiet prison fighting field instantly lively. Gazes came from all directions, passed through the void, and fell on Long Yun without any surprise. At this moment, Long Yun became the focus of everyone's attention. A warrior at the 7th level of the Void Realm dares to challenge a warrior at the 8th level of the Void Realm and threatens to kill him. Regardless, this courage is rare. Indeed, with the precedence of Yi Lu of the Yi family and Feng Yu of the Yinshin sect, this young swordsman from the Blackstone Empire actually dared to challenge a higher-level opponent. His courage is truly commendable. No matter what the outcome is, I support him. I support him too. The atmosphere of the entire prison fighting arena was completely ignited as Long Yun threatened to challenge the young talent of the 8th level of the Void Realm. You are a warrior of the 7th level of the Void Realm, and you want to kill me? The young man challenged by Long Yun laughed, and as he laughed, his face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. If you can't kill me in this battle, you will die. That depends on whether you have the ability. Long Yun said lightly. Snort. The young man snorted coldly, unable to hold back any longer, and took the initiative to strike first. Buzz, 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 buzz. Just like when he fought with Feng Tianwu before, the sky was filled with sword shadows that swept out like a net covering the sky and earth, covering Long Yun. And in the void above the young man's head, 24 phantoms of ancient horned dragons and more than 3,000 phantoms of ancient giant elephants rushed out, entering the 8th level of the virtual realm. The artistic conception of the sevenfold sword. Fourth grade spiritual sword. This is the strength of Long Yun's opponent. Duan Lingtian. How long do you think it will take Long Yun to kill him? Duan Lingtian was watching the battle intently when suddenly, a clear sound of energy condensed into Yuanli reached his ears. Duan Lingtian could tell that this was Su Li's energy condensed sound. Duan Lingtian was stunned at first, then asked, "Are you so sure that Long Yun can kill him? I guess Long Yun can kill him within 10 breaths from the moment he attacks. Do you want to make a bet with me?" Su Li's Yuanli condensed sound continued to come. 10 breaths. Su Li's words made Duan Lingtian realize Su Li's confidence in Long Yun. He felt that Su Li was not shooting in the dark. After all, Su Li's master and Long Yun's master are brothers, so perhaps Su Li knows something important. For example, what amazing martial art skills has Long Yun mastered now? And that martial art came from Long Yun's master. You clearly have complete confidence in Long Yun when you say that. If I were to continue betting with you at this point, wouldn't I be the one being taken advantage of? Duan Lingtian cursed with a smile while condensing his Yuanli. When Su Li heard this, he was stunned at first, then he smiled bitterly. He seemed to be too anxious, so Duan Lingtian didn't fall into the trap. After hearing what Su Li said just now, Duan Lingtian became very interested in the battle in front of him and began to watch it attentively. Now, Long Yun's opponent used the martial arts that he had previously displayed in front of Feng Tianwu, forming a sky full of sword shadows that swept towards Long Yun with great momentum. Every knife shadow is filled with unparalleled murderous intent. On the other hand, Long Yun's eyes suddenly focused when he saw the sword shadows sweeping down from the sky. He raised his hand, and the magic sword that Duan Lingtian had seen once appeared in his hand again. During the first round of selection, Duan Lingtian had personally witnessed Long Yun using this spiritual sword to resist the pressure exerted by the two old men. At that time, Duan Lingtian saw that this was a third-grade spiritual sword. Wow! As the Yuanli in Long Yun's hand was poured into the spiritual sword in his hand, a strange phenomenon suddenly occurred above his head. The phantoms of ancient horned dragons quickly condensed into shape. That is, soon, onlookers discovered something astonishing. That is, the number of ancient horned dragon phantoms that are rapidly condensing in the void above Long Yun's head is not much different from the ancient horned dragon phantoms in the void above his opponent's head. In the void above Long Yun's head, there were 23 phantoms of ancient horned dragons, plus more than 8,000 phantoms of ancient giant elephants. Compared with his opponent, he only had a few thousand fewer phantoms of ancient giant elephants. Third-grade spiritual weapon. This young sword cultivator from the Blackstone Empire also has a third-grade spiritual weapon in his hands. Suddenly, the entire prison fighting arena became boiling again. Third-grade spiritual weapon. Another third-grade spiritual weapon. The previous third-grade spiritual weapon belonged to Feng Tianwu of the Feng family, while this third-grade spiritual weapon belonged to the young sword cultivator from the Blackstone Empire. So far, 2 third-grade spiritual weapons have appeared in the Dynasty Martial Arts competition. Third-grade spiritual weapon. When Long Yun's opponent learned that the spiritual knife in Long Yun's hand was a third-grade spiritual weapon, his expression couldn't help but change. He knew exactly what it meant for a warrior in his early 30s to possess a third-grade spiritual weapon. Who is he? For a moment, he couldn't help but feel fearful, and even his attacks paused for a moment. At this moment, he felt deeply wary of Long Yun's mysterious background. Buzz, 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 buzz. Long Yun drew his sword, swinging it out one after another like lightning. For a moment, the blade light containing the power of the spiritual weapon and the artistic conception of the sword swept across the air. In an instant, a series of condensed Yuanli sword beams rushed towards the sword shadows in the sky, whose momentum had slowed down because Long Yun's opponent was distracted. Originally, no matter how fast Long Yun acted, he was acting at the last minute, which was equivalent to cramming at the last minute. In the end, he was unable to condense enough energy sword light to resist the numerous sword shadows in the sky. Just when most of the onlookers thought that Long Yun was going to lose. Buzz, 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 buzz. The Yuanli blade light that shot out from the spiritual knife in Long Yun's hand, after flying into the air, was actually divided into three, without exception. These scattered sword beams continued to move forward without slowing down, meeting the sword shadows in the sky. For a time, the two were evenly matched in terms of quantity. Boom, 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 boom. The sword lights and sword shadows collided, making a series of dull explosion sounds. At the same time, rolling airwaves swept over and turned into gusts of strong wind blowing in all directions. For a moment, the robes of most of the spectators around the prison fighting arena were blown up involuntarily, making rustling sounds. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Long Yun easily dissolved the sword shadows in the sky and perfectly resisted the opponent's attack. The next moment, Long Yun's actions made many people look confused. Logically speaking, Long Yun should have pursued the victory with all his strength, but he did not do so. Instead, he clenched the third-grade spiritual sword in his hands and held it across his head. Wow! The Yuan force in Long Yun's body surged, containing the unparalleled sevenfold sword realm. At this moment, the people present even had an illusion that Long Yun seemed to have merged with the third-grade spiritual sword in his hand and turned into a giant sword. The reason for this illusion is that the surging Yuanli in Long Yun's body formed the shape of a giant sword, covering Long Yun's entire body. Man and sword become one. Suddenly, Long Yun spoke word by word in a low voice without any emotion. The unity of man and sword? Long Yun's opponent had already come to his senses, but when he heard Long Yun's words, his face changed and he was shocked. As a fellow swordsman, he naturally knew what these four words meant. The unity of man and sword represents the highest realm of sword cultivation. There is no distinction between man and knife. Man is knife and knife is man. When the person is alive, the knife is there. When the person is dead, the knife is broken. Buzz. The next moment, the giant sword-shaped energy that enveloped Long Yun suddenly trembled, pushing Long Yun to fly out, like a giant sword flying through the air, splitting the air flow into two. When it reached the vicinity of the opponent, the giant sword suddenly stood up, and the next moment it was aimed at the opponent, suddenly whistling down, carrying the power to cut everything. Buzz. The huge knife fell down, and a huge blade light whizzed out from the tip of the knife. If you look closely, you can see that it is the blade light whistling out from the third-grade spiritual sword held in Long Yun's hands, which contains all his Yuanli, the artistic conception of the sword, and the power of the spiritual weapon amplification. When the giant sword transformed by Yuanli and covering Long Yun fell, Long Yun also tilted and fell down, and the third-grade spiritual sword in his hand flew in the air and slashed at the opponent. This scene happened in the blink of an eye, so fast that people could hardly react. No. Long Yun's opponent seemed to realize the horror of Long Yun's knife. He shouted loudly and moved his body to try to dodge. But can he escape? Buzz. The huge sword that was falling down seemed to have locked onto Long Yun's opponent. No matter which direction he went, it would still chop down at him. Snap. Before Long Yun's opponent could escape far, he was cut into two pieces by the whistling blade light from the tip of the giant sword. Seeing that the body was about to be split into two, it was a bloody scene. The giant sword suddenly turned. Call. The blade broke through the air, causing a sharp whistling sound, and slapped the corpse that had not yet been separated. Bang. There was a loud bang, and the corpse turned into a blood rain, scattered across the sky, and no intact piece could be seen. And Long Yun's opponent completely disappeared from this world. Quiet. There was a dead silence in the prison fighting arena. Although it is not the first time that someone has died in today's dynasty martial arts competition, this kind of death, which is more cruel than being torn into pieces, is the first time. At the same time, above the prison fighting arena, the giant sword transformed from Yuanli gradually disappeared, leaving only a young man standing there with the sword across his body. Tick tick, tick tick. The tip of the magic knife in his hand was still dripping with dazzling and eye-catching blood, which scattered into the sky, as if turning into small roses dotted with stars. Little roses kept falling on the prison fighting field. Lydia Su, have you known for a long time that Lydia Su has this skill? Duan Lingtian retracted his shocked gaze, looked at Su Li, and asked curiously with his Yuanli concentrated voice. It has to be said that Long Yun's previous move surprised him. Although it was still a long way from the true oneness of man and sword, it was rare for a warrior at the 7th level of the Void Realm to achieve this. To a certain extent, that strike of the sword even possessed the prototype of a heavenly level martial art. What do you think? Su Li did not give a direct answer, but it was not difficult to guess the answer in his mind. At the same time, the dead silent prison fighting arena gradually became lively. Unsurprisingly, all eyes converged on Long Yun again. It's hard to imagine that the sword strike just now was unleashed by a warrior at the 7th level of the Void Realm. The moment he transformed into a giant sword and attacked with the 3rd grade spirit sword, I felt as if he had truly transformed into a sword. I have the same feeling. He just mentioned man and sword become one. Perhaps this is the legendary man and sword become one. Man and sword become one isn't necessarily the case. However, the sword skills he displayed have already surpassed the scope of most high-level Earth-level offensive martial arts. Just now, when he said he wanted to kill that talented young man who had reached the 8th level of the Void Realm, I thought he was just bragging. But now it seems he wasn't just talking nonsense. He actually has the ability to do it. The crowd of spectators surrounding the prison fighting arena were talking about this, and their views on Long Yun had completely changed. Duan Lingtian, that sword cultivator, and this knife cultivator, all hail from the Blackstone Empire. Is the Blackstone Empire's climate and environment truly so favorable that it can produce so many monstrous geniuses? At some point, an audience member couldn't help but blurt out this sentence. This sentence caused a stir in the prison fighting arena. My wife is going to give birth next month. I've made up my mind. When my child is born, I'll take my family to settle down in the Blackstone Empire. My wife has been pregnant for several months. I plan to take her to the Blackstone Empire to give birth to the child. With the help of the Blackstone Empire's feng shui, perhaps my child will be as outstanding as these 3 in the future. No matter what, this time, the Blackstone Empire has become thoroughly famous. Duan Lingtian, Su Li, and Long Yun. Any one of these 3 people would be a leader among the contemporary young generation in the Han Dynasty. However, these 3 people appeared at the same time in a small empire under the Han Dynasty. Any normal person would be shocked by this. Some even think, could it be that the Blackstone Empire is blessed by the gods? The group of talented young men from the Blackstone Empire sitting in the audience, except for Duan Lingtian, all had red faces and were extremely excited. At this moment, they were proud to be part of the Blackstone Empire. They never imagined that their hometown, the Blackstone Empire, would receive such honor on the vast stage of the Han Dynasty. This is something they could not imagine in the past. For a moment, they couldn't help but look at Duan Lingtian, Su Li, and Long Yun, their eyes full of admiration. It is because of these 3 people that the Blackrock Empire has achieved such glory. Prince Yong, your Blackstone Empire is going to shake the entire Han Dynasty this time. Then, the Blackstone Empire may become the most powerful empire under the Han Dynasty. Xiangying smiled at Prince Yong beside him. Thank you, Vice President Xiang, for your kind praise. Prince Yong said modestly. However, deep in the eyes of Prince Yong, there was a look of excitement. As the king of Yong of the Blackstone Empire, although he is not the emperor, his status is more noble than that of the emperor. In a sense, he can be regarded as the patron saint of the Blackstone Empire. Another third-grade spiritual weapon. How could someone from the Blackstone Empire possibly possess a third-grade spiritual weapon? In the audience seats reserved for the royal family of the Han dynasty, the emperor frowned, his eyes full of confusion. You know, even he himself does not have a third-grade spiritual weapon. Although the royal family of the Han dynasty had a third-grade spiritual weapon, that third-grade spiritual weapon was in the hands of his great-uncle. A person from a small empire, a mere 7th-level Void Realm warrior, is worthy of possessing a third-grade spiritual weapon. The second prince by his eyes revealed greed. If there weren't so many people watching, he might have rushed forward impatiently and snatched the third-grade spiritual sword from Long Yun's hand for himself. Master Dao, a third-grade spiritual sword? It seems he has had some fortuitous encounters as well. Zishang's eyes flashed with surprise as he murmured to himself, indeed, if he hadn't had a fortuitous encounter, he wouldn't be here today, let alone competing against so many powerful young men from the Han dynasty. Zishang was extremely sure of this. As one of the 5 great young masters, Zishang knew the details of young Master Dao, who was also one of the 5 great young masters. Zishang, do you know him? Zishang's mumblings fell into the ears of the old man in black sitting beside him without missing a word. Yes, master. Zishang nodded respectfully, and then told Long Yun's background one by one. The old man in black suddenly understood what was going on, his eyes sparkling with brilliance. So, the third-grade spiritual sword in his hand must have been found from some ruins, or given to him by someone else. The latter is more likely. That's right. Zishang deeply agreed with his master's guess. If the third-grade spiritual sword was picked up by Long Yun from some ruins, it only means that Long Yun was lucky, but it is impossible for Long Yun to possess such powerful cultivation and means. After confirming this, although the old man in black was jealous of the third-grade spiritual sword in Long Yun's hand, he did not dare to snatch it away. What a joke! Behind Long Yun, there is most likely a powerful person who can give away a third-grade spiritual weapon at will. There is no doubt about the strength of that strong man. Would you risk provoking such a powerful person to seize the third-grade spiritual sword? He asked himself if he had the courage. At this moment, just like Feng Tianwu before, the third-grade spiritual sword in Long Yun's hand unsurprisingly became the focus of everyone's attention. It was not until Long Yun put away the magic knife that the fiery gazes around him shifted elsewhere. Call. Enjoying the respectful gazes around him, Long Yun flew back to the outside of the audience seats where the people from the Blackstone Empire were, stood in the air, and stood beside Su Li. Next, the second round of selection continues. At this moment, because 2 more young talents who had entered the 8th level of the Void Realm had died, the only young talents who had entered the 8th level of the Void Realm were Feng Tianwu and Su Li. The remaining 9 people, including Long Yun, are all warriors at the 7th level of the Void Realm. However, now no one dares to look down on Long Yun just because he is a warrior at the 7th level of the Void Realm. At least, after the other 8 young talents who had entered the 7th level of the Void Realm came on the stage one after another, they did not dare to challenge Feng Tianwu and Su Li, nor did they dare to challenge Long Yun. Although Long Yun was only a 7th level warrior in the Void Realm, his combat power was such that he could even kill an 8th level warrior in the Void Realm, making the remaining 8 7th level young talents in the Void Realm both respectful and fearful of him. Of the 10 spots for the 10 Dynasties martial competition, 6 young masters of the 9th level of the Void Realm each take 1. 3 of the remaining 4 spots go to Feng Tianwu, Su Li, and Long Yun. Does anyone else have any objections? After a group of 7th level Void Realm warriors challenged each other, the old man who presided over today's Dynasty martial arts competition asked a question. Of course, he was asking about the other 8 young talents who had reached the 7th level of the Void Realm besides Long Yun. No problem. No problem. Immediately, the 8 young talents expressed that they had no objection. They are self-aware. Perhaps, the 8 of them can compete with each other. But if Feng Tianwu, Su Li, and Long Yun were involved, he would definitely be asking for trouble. It would be better to admit defeat now and save a lot of time. Otherwise, when Feng Tianwu and the other two come on stage and challenge them, they will still admit defeat. And obviously, the old man who presided over today's Dynasty martial arts competition also had the same idea. In this case, the final spot will be decided by the 8 of you. The old man continued, "You are lucky. If 4 talented young men of the 8th level of the Void Realm hadn't died today, you might not have had this opportunity." The 8 people deeply agreed with the old man's words. Really? If the 4 young talents who had entered the 8th level of the Void Realm had not been killed, they would never have had the opportunity to get a spot in the 10 Dynasties martial arts competition. Sometimes, luck is really important. In addition, the old man then added, "The final winner among the 8 of you will not only receive a spot in the 10 Dynasties martial arts competition, but even if he or she comes in last in today's Dynasty martial arts competition, he or she will receive a reward from the Han Dynasty royal family." A royal reward? For a moment, the 8 young talents who had reached the 7th level of the Void Realm began to breathe rapidly. Next, 8 young talents began to compete. Time passes quietly. Finally, the result came out, and it was a young man in blue who had comprehended the sevenfold spear's artistic concept and successfully obtained the qualification to participate in the 10 Dynasties martial arts competition. This young man in blue was not from any faction of the Han Dynasty, but from an empire. His name was Zheng Jun. If you have no intention of competing for a top spot in the ranking battle, you may forfeit now. You will receive a reward from the Han Dynasty royal family, 100 low-grade yuan share. One of the 2 old men spoke to Zheng Jun first. 100 low-grade yuan stones? Zheng Jun's breathing quickened when he heard this. As a young talent from the empire under the Han Dynasty, yuanshi is an unattainable legendary existence to him. And he can get yuanshi now? 100 low-grade yuan stones. Suddenly, many people in the prison fighting arena became jealous. Especially the young talents from the major empires, especially the 7 young talents at the 7th level of the Void Realm who had just been eliminated. All of them were furious. Just a little bit. It's just a little bit different, and the one who stays might be one of them. 100 low-grade yuan stones might not be worthy of the attention of the top powers in the Han Dynasty, but to the people of the major empires, they were treasures of extraordinary value that could not be measured by gold or silver. I give up the chance to compete for the qualifying battle. Zheng Jun spoke directly to the old man without any hesitation. He knows himself well. Now, no matter whether he gave up or not, he was destined to be the last one in line today. Not to mention the 6 young warriors who had entered the 9th level of the Void Realm. Even the other 3 were far from being his match. The other old man nodded, raised his hand, and a storage ring shot out, flying straight towards Zheng Jun. "This is your reward." "Thank you, senior." After taking the ring, Zheng Jun thanked the old man and returned to the middle audience seats where a group of people from his empire were sitting. For a moment, the audience became lively and excited. Today, the performance of their empire's young talents in the Dynasty martial competition may not be as good as that of the Blackstone Empire, but they have also made their mark among the 36 empires present, which is enough to be proud of. Do you 3 want to challenge the 6 talented young men of the 9th level of the Void Realm? If not, you 3 will directly compete in a ranking battle. The 7th, 8th, and 9th place winners will receive different rewards from the Han Dynasty royal family. Above the prison fighting arena, the old man's gaze left Feng Tianwu and fell on Su Li and Long Yun, who were standing together. No challenge. Feng Tianwu was the first to shake her head. "I don't challenge either." Lydia Su also shook his head. "Same." Long Yun said. "Very good." The old man nodded and then continued. "Now, the rankings of 7th to 9th will be decided among the 3 of you. Miss Tianwu, I'll start with you." Later, The old man looked at Feng Tianwu and asked, "Who do you want to challenge?" Feng Tianwu flew out like a ball of fire and arrived above the prison fighting arena in a moment. Her eyes immediately fell on Long Yun. "I challenge him." Long Yun of the Blackstone Empire. Suddenly, the two old men looked at Long Yun at the same time. Most of the people around the prison fighting arena also looked at Long Yun, making him the focus of everyone's attention again. Facing Feng Tianwu's challenge, Long Yun's eyes flickered a few times, and he directly admitted defeat. He had already witnessed Feng Tianwu's strength. Although he was confident in his own methods, the gap in strength made him feel powerless. This frighteningly young-looking woman in red not only had a higher cultivation level than him, but also a stronger artistic realm of comprehension than him. Even the spiritual weapon in her hand was stronger than his. He had seen the third-grade spiritual weapon in the woman's hand before. It was a third-grade spiritual weapon that could increase power by 70%. It is much stronger than the third-grade spiritual sword in his hand. Overall, his strength is far inferior to that of the woman, and there is no need to fight at all. The woman's strength was enough to crush him. Su Li. After Long Yun admitted defeat, Feng Tianwu shifted his gaze to Su Li and nodded slightly to him. Compared to Long Yun, she was quite polite when she looked at Lydia Su. All this was naturally because she knew that Su Li was Duan Lingtian's friend. Unlike Long Yun's surrender, Su Li was not afraid at all in the face of Feng Tianwu's challenge. He flew out and confronted Feng Tianwu. "Miss Tianwu." Su Li nodded to Feng Tianwu. "I know you're a friend of Brother Duan, but I'm determined to secure the 7th spot in today's Dynasty Martial Arts competition." Feng Tianwu said to Su Li, her words full of confidence. "Me too." Facing Feng Tianwu, a woman who looked like a fairy descending to earth, Su Li did not have any intention of being polite, as if he was not facing a stunning beauty, but an ordinary person who could not be more ordinary. The two stood facing each other, successfully attracting the attention of everyone present. Feng Tianwu, the daughter of the Feng family's eldest master, showed her amazing strength in her first performance today. His cultivation level has reached the 8th level of the Void Realm. He has comprehended the 8th level of the artistic conception of fire and holds a third-grade spirit whip that can amplify his strength by 70%. Su Li, a young talent of the Blackstone Empire, has the same level of cultivation and artistic conception as Feng Tianwu. However, so far, in the eyes of the audience in the prison fighting arena, the spiritual weapon displayed in Su Li's hand is just a 4th-grade spiritual sword. This Su Li from the Blackstone Empire has a good level of cultivation and artistic conception, not inferior to Miss Tianwu. However, the spiritual weapon in his hand is only a 4th-grade spiritual sword, so he will definitely suffer a loss. A 4th-grade spirit sword is far inferior to the 3rd-grade spirit whip in Miss Tianwu's hand. Most importantly, the 3rd-grade spirit whip in Miss Tianwu's hand can amplify power by 70%. The difference in spiritual weapons is too great. Su Li has no chance of winning this battle. Almost all the spectators around the prison fighting arena were not optimistic about Su Li. Facing the doubts of a group of people, Lydia Su's expression remained unchanged. "Su Li, I don't need a 3rd-grade spiritual weapon to fight you." Feng Tianwu spoke to Su Li. Her words were frank and honest, and she was as capable as any man. For a moment, the entire prison fighting arena was boiling again. Miss Tianwu is worthy of being the daughter of Lord Wudao. She is an open-minded person and is unwilling to take advantage of Su Li and spiritual weapons. I'm becoming increasingly envious of Duan Lingtian from the Blackstone Empire. How could he possibly have the ability to marry someone as remarkable as Miss Tianwu? What virtue and ability do you think Duan Lingtian possesses? Compared to him, who are you? The discussion around the prison fighting arena unconsciously shifted to Duan Lingtian. Many people were targeting Duan Lingtian, while others were feeling sorry for him. The latter were mostly due to their deep admiration for Duan Lingtian. Tianwu and Su Li are having a ranking match, and they're actually dragging me into this. Duan Lingtian looked at him strangely, feeling as if he had been shot, even while lying down. Who did we offend? Need not. After hearing Feng Tianwu's frank words, Su Li shook his head. Just when Feng Tianwu was looking puzzled, a 3-foot green sword with flowing light appeared out of thin air in Su Li's hand. This is not the spiritual sword that Su Li used before. Soon, someone discovered the clue. At this moment, the Yuan Li in Su Li's hand emerged and then merged into the 3-foot green sword in his hand. In an instant, strange phenomena appeared in the sky above the void. First, 11 phantoms of ancient horned dragons appeared, followed by 7 phantoms of ancient giant elephants, plus more than 4,000 phantoms of ancient giant elephants. Amplification of 68%, a 3rd-grade spiritual sword. Su Li also has a 3rd-grade spiritual weapon? Oh my god, is today the gathering of 3rd-grade spiritual weapons? Doesn't our Han Dynasty only have one 3rd-grade spiritual weapon? And that 3rd-grade spiritual weapon seems to be in the hands of the royal family, right? As a 3rd-grade spiritual sword appeared in Su Li's hand, the entire prison fighting arena exploded. If there was anyone who wasn't surprised, it would be Duan Lingtian. He had heard a long time ago that Su Li and Long Yun had 3rd-grade spiritual weapons in their hands, so even if he saw Su Li take out a 3rd-grade spiritual sword with his own eyes, he didn't think it was a big deal. Brother Lingtian, were the 3rd-grade spiritual weapons in the hands of the 3 of them all refined by the 3rd-grade weapon refiner behind you? Duan Lingtian's calm expression fell into Xiang Ying's eyes in detail. Xiang Ying couldn't help but ask in a condensed voice. There was a hint of urgency in his tone. Duan Lingtian was somewhat taken aback when he heard Xiang Ying's energy-condensed voice, and it took him a moment to react. He knew that Xiang Ying was overthinking it. Master Xiang, you think too much. Duan Lingtian responded truthfully. Is that overthinking it? Xiang Ying was startled at first, then he inquired further. Am I really overthinking it? Whether it's Miss Tianwu of the Feng family or Su Li and Long Yun, the 2 young talents of the Blackstone Empire, they all seem to have a close connection with you, right? That's right. Duan Lingtian did not deny this. The 3 of them have some connection with me. However, among the 3 of them, only Tianwu's was forged by the 3rd-grade weapon refiner behind me. Su Li and Long Yun's have nothing to do with the 3rd-grade weapon refiner behind me. Besides, of these 2 people, I am only friends with Su Li. I might be able to ask the 3rd-grade weapon refiner behind me to refine a 3rd-grade spiritual weapon for Su Li, but I can't help Long Yun. Duan Lingtian spoke frankly. Xiang Ying had no doubts about this, but he couldn't help but say in shock, Brother Lingtian, the 3rd-grade weapon refiner behind you is truly remarkable. He was able to refine a 3rd-grade spiritual weapon like the one Miss Tianwu has, which can amplify 70%. Well enough. Duan Lingtian nodded. It was because he was thick-skinned that he did so. Otherwise, he would have blushed uncontrollably from the compliments. Another 3rd-grade spiritual weapon. In the upper-class audience seats reserved for the royal family of the Han Dynasty, the emperor's mouth twitched and his majesty disappeared. Even though he held a high position in the Han Dynasty, he couldn't help but be shocked at this moment. It's someone from the Blackstone Empire again. The old man in black couldn't help but gasp. The people of the Blackstone Empire are truly blessed. Bai Hao, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke, with a hint of surprise in his tone. As for Zishang and his sister, they didn't say anything. However, Bai He, who was sitting next to Ziyan, had an even greedier look in his eyes than when Long Yun took out the 3rd-grade spiritual sword. Another 3rd-grade spiritual weapon, and it's a 3rd-grade spiritual sword. He himself uses a sword and has comprehended the artistic conception of the sword. Compared to the 3rd-grade spiritual knife, he wanted to get a 3rd-grade spiritual sword more. Su Li right. Bai He's eyes were full of desire. However, soon, a sentence reached Bai He's ears, like a basin of cold water poured on by his head. Here, you'd better not even think about the third-grade spiritual weapon in Long Yun and Su Li's hands. Bai He could tell that this was the condensed voice of his father, the current emperor of the Han dynasty. Why? Upon hearing this, Bai He couldn't help but frown and responded with an unwilling look on his face. Snort. The emperor snorted, his Yuan Li condensed into a voice, and said with some regret, "Don't you think about it carefully? Why do they have third-grade spiritual weapons? Do you think it just fell from the sky? Besides, they are just people from a small empire. To have such strength, do you think they don't have masters behind them?" The emperor's very reasonable words made Bai He hesitate. At this time, in addition to using the third-grade spiritual sword, Su Li also directly demonstrated his comprehension of the eightfold sword realm. After a moment, Su Li chose to take the initiative and attacked Feng Tianwu first. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Sword shadows crisscrossed, sweeping towards Feng Tianwu like a shadow. On the other hand, Feng Tianwu shook the third-grade spiritual whip in her hand, which began to move rhythmically around her slender and graceful body, forming a crimson light shield again. This crimson light shield was like a huge fireball, protecting Feng Tianwu entirely inside. Clang, 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 clang. Su Li used the third-grade spiritual sword in his hand again and again, and the fireballs fell on the big fireball on Feng Tianwu's body. Every time the spirit sword fell, the huge fireball shrank a little. Of course, if you look at it with the naked eye, it is difficult to see the changes in the fireball. Finally, in full view of everyone, the fireball moved and moved away. However, Feng Tianwu realized that she could no longer be passive, otherwise, she would almost certainly lose. Although defensive martial arts can solve urgent problems temporarily, it is impossible to use them all the time. In this qualifying battle, what she had to do was not to tie with Su Li, but to defeat Su Li so that she could occupy the 7th place in this dynasty martial arts competition. The 7th seat, as she had said before. She is determined to win. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Finally, Feng Tianwu made a move. The third-grade spirit whip in his hand swept across, turning into dense whip shadows, breaking through the air and sweeping out, pointing directly at Su Li. And these whip shadows fell from the sky like a torrential rain. A shower of flowers. Duan Lingtian was stunned when he saw this scene. He couldn't help but recall the scenes when he first met Feng Tianwu in Fengqi City. Duan Lingtian still remembers. At first, when he first met Tianwu, it was on the martial arts competition to win a bride arena in front of the Fengqi City Lord's mansion. He fought with Feng Tianwu the first time they met. During that fight, Feng Tianwu had used a similar martial art. Later, he learned from Feng Tianwu that the martial art was called Flower Rain in the Sky. It seems that what Tianwu is performing now is not Flower Rain in the Sky. Soon, Duan Lingtian discovered that the martial arts Tianwu was currently displaying, although similar to the original Flower Rain all over the sky, were obviously much stronger than Flower Rain all over the sky. In coordination with the eightfold state of fire, when Tianwu attacked, the whip shadows that whizzed out seemed to turn into flaming meteors, covering Su Li from head to toe. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. It must be said that Su Li was very powerful, with his cultivation and artistic conception comparable to Feng Tianwu's, and a third-grade spiritual sword that was weaker than the third-grade spiritual weapon in Feng Tianwu's hand. He managed to block Feng Tianwu's overwhelming attack. Every time Su Li's body moved, it was as if he turned into a sharp sword, swiftly sweeping out and setting off a sword-whistling sound. The 3-foot-long blade in his hand was as fast as lightning, forming an all-permeable sword that repeatedly blocked the third-grade spiritual whip in Feng Tianwu's hand. The battle is becoming more and more intense. The atmosphere in the prison fighting arena also became quiet and solemn. This guy Su Li is so strong? It seems that the master behind him is not simple. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but feel surprised when he saw that Su Li, with a strength weaker than Feng Tianwu, was still able to deal with Feng Tianwu with his sword skills that simplified complexity and did not lose the upper hand at all. For a moment, he became even more curious about the master behind Su Li. Su Li's master must be a powerful master in the void transformation realm. To be able to teach Su Li to this level, his understanding of the sword must have reached a certain level. At the very least, he should have comprehended the high-level sword realm. High-level artistic conception is also known as the virtual artistic conception. Generally speaking, only those who are strong enough at the level of Huaxi realm can grasp such a state of mind. Of course, nothing is absolute. If one's own comprehension is far superior to that of a Dongshu realm warrior with great talent, he or she will also have the opportunity to comprehend the Huaxi realm. This kind of warrior is much rarer than warriors in the void transformation realm. Moreover, any one of them is an extremely terrifying existence. A quarter of an hour passed quickly. Feng Tianwu and Su Li were evenly matched. Half an hour passed. The battle continues. At this point, some spectators couldn't help themselves and urged impatiently. If this keeps going on, when will it end? There's still a ranking battle for the 9th level young masters in the Void Realm. That's right. If Su Li and Miss Tianwu fight for a whole day and a whole night, then don't we have to wait for a whole day and a whole night as well? In my opinion, there's no point in fighting any further. Let's just call this a draw. Many viewers were a little impatient, and some also made suggestions. Above the prison fighting arena, the two old men in charge of presiding over the dynasty martial competition looked at each other and then looked at the emperor of the Han dynasty. The emperor nodded to them. Suddenly, the two old men looked at Feng Tianwu and Su Li, who were still fighting, ready to announce the result of tie. Tianwu Xiao. One of the old men stopped talking before he even finished speaking. It wasn't that someone interrupted him, but he just kept his mouth open, not making any sound, staring blankly at the scene before him. In full view of the public, Feng Tianwu, who had originally fought Su Li to a draw, suddenly saw the shadow of an ancient horned dragon appear in the air above his head without any warning. Anyone with a discerning eye can see the reason at a glance. At this moment, within the Yuanli on the 3rd grade spiritual whip in Feng Tianwu's hand, the strands of crimson energy became noticeably more solid. 9-fold Fire Realm. Duan Lingtian, who had been watching the battle between Feng Tianwu and Su Li intently, couldn't help but be moved. He never expected that Tianwu would comprehend the 9 folds of Fire Realm at such a crucial moment. As expected of the owner of the Fire Spirit body, Tianwu is truly the darling of the Fire Realm. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but feel shocked. The others were also frightened. Is this possible? Oh my god, how old is Miss Tianwu this year? She's already reached the 8th level of the Void Realm and comprehended the 9 folds of Fire Realm. I really feel like I've been living like a dog for most of my life. It's not just you. Isn't it the same for me? There was a lot of discussion around the prison fighting arena, and most people were dejected. After Feng Tianwu comprehended the 9-layered Fire Realm on the spot, her strength increased greatly, and unsurprisingly, she forced Su Li, who had been fighting her to a draw, to retreat. Just when she was about to press on with her victory. I give up. Su Li spoke, with a sigh in his tone. At this moment, Lydia Su felt a little sorry. Originally, the difference between the 3-grade spiritual weapons made his strength invisibly weaker than Feng Tianwu's, but the sword skills he displayed were undoubtedly stronger than Feng Tianwu's martial arts. Therefore, in terms of true strength, he is no weaker than Feng Tianwu. But he never expected that just when he thought the battle with Feng Tianwu would end in a draw, Feng Tianwu actually comprehended the 9 folds of fire on the spot. Feng Tianwu, who had comprehended the 9 folds of Fire Realm, was equivalent to having the power of an ancient horned dragon, breaking the balance between him and Feng Tianwu. There is no point in continuing the fight, because he had no chance of winning, not even a draw. Su Li, you are worthy of being Brother Duan's friend. Your sword skills are very strong. If my strength were not greater than yours, I would not be your opponent. Facing Su Li, who admitted defeat, Feng Tianwu said sincerely, Miss Tianwu, you are too kind. Your talent and understanding are what truly amaze me. Lydia Su said with some shame. Talent? Insight. Hearing Su Li's words, Feng Tianwu's eyes, which had been shining brightly, dimmed instantly. She sighed inwardly. If possible, I would rather not have this talent and understanding. I just want to be an ordinary person. Her talent and understanding are so extraordinary because of the fire spirit body. As the owner of the fire spirit body, the pressure she bears is not something that ordinary warriors can imagine. When a person knows at an early age that he will face a death calamity with no chance of survival at the age of 30, what kind of feeling is it? Only those who have truly experienced it know it. Miss Tianwu defeated Long Yun and Su Li successively and ranked 7th in the Dynasty Martial Arts ranking tournament. She received a reward from the Han Dynasty royal family, 1,000 low-grade yuan share. One of the old men raised his hand and handed Feng Tianwu a storage ring. 1,000 low-grade yuan stones. Suddenly, the entire prison fighting arena was boiling again. 1,000 low-grade yuan share are 10 times the reward for the 10th place match. If I could get this many yuan share, I'd wake up laughing in my dreams. Don't dream. For ordinary warriors like you and me, we don't even know if we can collect 100 low-grade yuan share in our entire lives, let alone 1,000. Yes, ordinary warriors like us can only accept our fate in this regard. Many viewers with ordinary cultivation levels couldn't help but sigh. However, Feng Tianwu, the person involved, did not show any joy when faced with 1,000 low-grade yuan stones. After taking the ring calmly, he returned to the Feng family's exclusive high-class audience seats and sat next to Feng Wudao. Brother Wudao, congratulations. The emperor of the Han dynasty looked towards Feng Wudao and congratulated him repeatedly. Feng Wudao looked up at the emperor and nodded lightly. Faced with Feng Wudao's casualness, the emperor did not feel any dissatisfaction because he knew that the man nodded to him, which was already a great respect for him. If it were someone else, he might not have paid any attention at all. Master Wudao, congratulations. Congratulations, Chief Feng. At this time, many people from various forces came to congratulate Feng Wudao and Feng Tiannan. Feng Wudao looked calm, as if he hadn't heard it, and ignored it. Feng Tiannan, on the other hand, forced a stiff smile with some numbness and nodded in response. Obviously, he still couldn't get over Feng Yunxiang's death. Feng Yunxiang was first defeated by Feng Tianwu, which was not a big deal. But in the end, he died at the hands of Long Yun of the Blackstone Empire, causing great loss of face for his Feng family. However, his Feng family couldn't do anything against Long Yun. At least, the Feng family dared not act rashly before confirming the identity of the powerful person behind Long Yun, who gave him the 3rd-grade spiritual sword. Above the prison fighting arena, another old man looked at Su Li and Long Yun. Su Li, Long Yun, now, it will be up to you two to decide the 8th and 9th seats in the qualifying battle. I give up. After Long Yun glanced at Su Li, he admitted defeat again. Although there was reluctance in the depths of his eyes, he also knew that he was not Su Li's opponent at the moment. Master, don't worry. Sooner or later, I will defeat Su Li and fight for your honor. Long Yun made a silent promise in his heart. So, the 8th in today's Dynasty Martial Arts ranking tournament is Su Li. Su Li, you will receive a reward from the royal family of our Han Dynasty, 500 low-grade yuan share. When the old man raised his hand, 2 storage rings appeared in his hand, and he handed one of them to Su Li. Inside, there were exactly 500 low-grade yuan stones. Long Yun, you are the 9th place winner in today's Dynasty Martial Arts ranking tournament. You will receive a reward of 200 low-grade yuan stones. Then, The old man handed another storage ring to Long Yun. After Su Li and Long Yun took the ring, they flew to the middle audience seats where the people from the Blackstone Empire were sitting amidst envious and jealous gazes. Huh? Su Li and Long Yun didn't seem to be happy at all after receiving so many yuan stones. How strange. Soon, someone discovered the clue. Miss Tianwu didn't react much after receiving 1,000 low-grade yuan share. This is normal. After all, she is of noble status and has no shortage of yuan share. But Su Li and Long Yun are only from a small empire. They can remain so calm in the face of low-grade yuan share. It's really surprising. Many people sighed. Of course, some people refuted this statement, and they had good reasons. Humph. Don't forget that both Su Li and Long Yun have a third-grade spiritual weapon in their hands. That's right. That's a third-grade spiritual weapon. Even among the most outstanding young talents in our Han Dynasty, I'm afraid there may not be anyone else who possesses it except Miss Tianwu. Compared to a third-grade spiritual weapon, a low-grade elemental stone is nothing. During the Han Dynasty, there was a vein of yuanshi that produced a lot of low-grade yuanshi. As for the third-grade spiritual weapon, before today, the only one on display was the one belonging to the royal family of the Han Dynasty. It is obvious which one is more precious between the two. Soon, the topic was ended. The other 6 young talents who have reached the 9th level of the Void Realm are about to compete in their final ranking battle. It's truly exciting. Yes, today's highlight is about to begin. 6 young masters at the 9th level of the Void Realm are about to engage in a fierce duel. What a pity, Miss Tianwu. She said from the beginning that she wouldn't compete with 6 talented young men in the 9th level of the Void Realm. Now, she has comprehended the 9th level of fire. She originally had the opportunity to compete with a powerful young man in the 7th level of the Void Realm, but now she has missed it. This is not Miss Tianwu's fault. Even she couldn't have known in advance that she would be able to successfully comprehend the 9-fold fire realm in the battle with Su Li. The atmosphere in the prison fighting arena became lively again. Everyone's attention shifted to the 6 young, powerful men at the 9th level of the Void Realm, including Duan Lingtian. Of course, many people also mentioned Feng Tianwu and felt sorry for her. Young lady, do you regret it? In the premium audience seats reserved for the Feng family, Old Kong looked at Feng Tianwu and asked with a smile. Feng Tianwu shook her head gently. I have no regrets. The 10 Dynasties martial competition is the final stage. Today's ranking battle is nothing compared to the 10 Dynasties martial competition. Ranking is irrelevant. Hearing Feng Tianwu's words, a rare smile of relief appeared on Feng Wudao's face. His daughter has grown up. Now, please invite the last 6 young talents to come on stage. Above the prison fighting arena, the voice of one of the old men was transmitted and clearly heard by everyone present. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As the old man opened his mouth, 3 figures flew out first, obviously well prepared. These 3 people are the second prince of the Han Dynasty, Bai He, the young prince Bai Hao, and the eldest son of the Yi family, Yi Xiao. Duan Lingtian, come back with a first place. Su Li looked at Duan Lingtian and encouraged him with a grin. Su Li's words resonated with most of the young talents in the Blackstone Empire. Their eyes fell on Duan Lingtian. Yes, Duan Lingtian, win first place. Then, our Blackstone Empire will really be in the spotlight. If Duan Lingtian really takes first place in today's Dynasty Martial Arts Tournament, I'm thrilled just thinking about the scene. Duan Lingtian, keep going. We're counting on you. Facing the passionate young talents of the Blackstone Empire, Duan Lingtian shrugged, shook his head and smiled. I can't guarantee that I can be ranked first, but I will definitely try my best. As he said, he couldn't guarantee it. After all, on the stage of this Dynasty martial arts competition, he was being stared at by so many pairs of eyes belonging to the powerful Cave Void Realm Masters, and he did not dare to use his mental power rashly. Otherwise, if he used his mental power to perform the soul skill 1,000 illusions, the other 5 people would not even be able to touch the corner of his clothes. Now, he has to use his real strength to compete with the other 5 young strong men. Duan Lingtian, they were just joking. Don't feel pressured. Prince Yong said to Duan Lingtian. Yeah, we were just kidding. Apparently realizing that their actions would put pressure on Duan Lingtian, a group of young talents from the Blackstone Empire hurried to remedy the situation. But they were overthinking it. Duan Lingtian did not feel any pressure because of this. After all, when he participated in the Dynasty Martial competition, he never thought about winning glory for the Blackstone Empire. He, Duan Lingtian, only lives for himself and those close to him. Brother Lingtian. Xiang Ying turned to look at Duan Lingtian, his eyes filled with encouragement. Duan Lingtian responded with a smile, then flew out of the audience seats and landed above the prison fighting arena. At this time, Zhang Shouyong of the Zhang family and Zi Shang of the Han Dynasty royal family also appeared one by one. Including Duan Lingtian, 6 talented young men at the 9th level of the Void Realm stood in different places, their eyes fixed on the 2 old men, waiting for them to explain the rules. Soon, the old man said, the 6 of you will decide the top 6 rankings in today's Dynasty Martial Arts Competition ranking battle. The higher your ranking, the greater the reward you will receive. There are no specific rules for the duel between the 6 of you. Just like the previous few, you can freely choose your opponents. Those who choose their opponents may not challenge either of the 2 people who just dueled. Also, in the duel between the 6 of you, no killing is allowed. Of course, this doesn't mean you can't go all out, but I just want to remind you that if any of your opponents are in mortal danger, the 2 of us will intervene directly. Of course, if we rescue the person in mortal danger, it means they have lost the battle. The 2 old men added to each other. Duan Lingtian and the other 6 nodded in agreement upon hearing this. Duan Lingtian was not surprised that killing was not allowed in the battle for the top 6. After all, the 10 young talents who were chosen today to participate in the 10 Dynasties Martial Arts Competition will all participate in the 10 Dynasties Martial Arts Competition 1 year later. The performance of the 10 young talents in the 10 Dynasties Martial Arts Competition is linked to the interests of the Han Dynasty. It is said that the dynasties to which some young talents who performed well in the 10 Dynasties Martial Arts Competition belong will receive 3rd-grade spiritual weapons and some precious 3rd-grade elixirs from external forces after the 10 Dynasties Martial Arts Competition comes to an end. All of this is also the reason why all the major dynasties were so eager to participate in the 10 Dynasties Martial Competition. If there were no benefits, no dynasty would be willing to spend so much time and effort on an inexplicable 10 Dynasties Martial Competition. Because of this, the Han Dynasty would never allow Duan Lingtian and the other 6 to get into trouble during the Dynasty Martial Competition, because each of them could potentially win glory for the Han Dynasty at the 10 Dynasties Martial Competition a year later, or even gain certain benefits. As for the several young talents of the 8th level of the Void Realm who were killed earlier, they might be considered outstanding in the Dynasty Martial Competition, but if they really came to the 10 Dynasties Martial Competition, they would almost all be supporting roles. Their death was of no consequence to the grand plan of the Han Dynasty. Now, the top 6 battle begins. Who among you will go first and initiate the first challenge? One of the old men spoke up, questioning Duan Lingtian and the other 6. Almost at the moment the old man finished speaking, a figure flew out and arrived at the central area above the prison fighting arena. It was Yi Shao from the Yi family. Yi Shao, the son of the patriarch of the Yi family, is also the eldest young master of the Yi family and the strongest among the contemporary young generation of the Yi family. Not only that, Yi Shao is even recognized as the greatest genius of the Yi family in 100 years. From this we can see that Yi Shao is quite capable. In addition, Yi Shao is recognized by the people of the Han Dynasty as one of the 3 strongest young people of the contemporary generation of the Han Dynasty, on par with Zhang Shouyong of the Zhang family and the second prince of the royal family, by Yi Xiao. Seeing Yi Xiao being the first to come on stage, among the other 5 young talents, except for Duan Lingtian, and by Hao who had calm expressions, the eyes of the others all flashed. At this moment, they were all curious about who Yi Xiao would choose as his opponent. Yi Xiao's eyes swept over Duan Lingtian and the other 3, as if he was considering who he should choose as his opponent in this battle. Who do you think Yi Xiao will choose? At this time, the area around the prison fighting arena also became lively. Looking at him now, he seems a little hesitant. However, I think it's more likely that he will choose Duan Lingtian of the Blackstone Empire. I think so too. After all, Duan Lingtian just killed Yi Lu, the second strongest young man in the Yi family. Yi Xiao should avenge Yi Lu. Many people talked about it and speculated. Most people thought Yi Xiao would challenge Duan Lingtian. Even Duan Lingtian himself, after hearing the discussions around him, felt that Yi Xiao might really challenge him. Soon, Duan Lingtian noticed that Yi Xiao's gaze was fixed. Not me. When he found that Yi Xiao's eyes were not on him, he couldn't help but be stunned, a little surprised. At this moment, Yi Xiao's gaze was fixed on a young man not far away. Zhang Shouyong. Back then, I fought you twice, and both times I was defeated by you. Later, when I wanted to defeat you and avenge my previous defeat, you left the capital and have not been heard from since. Yi Xiao's gaze instantly locked onto Zhang Shouyong, and he spoke slowly. Today is the 3rd time I've fought you. I want to defeat you and avenge my previous defeat. Yi Xiao was filled with fighting spirit. Call. Zhang Shouyong remained calm when challenged by Yi Xiao. He moved his body and instantly reached the center of the sky above the prison fighting arena, standing opposite Yi Xiao. Yi Xiao. Finally, Zhang Shouyong spoke. Do you know why you lost to me the first 2 times? Those 2 times, your strength, just like today, was no weaker than mine. Humph. It's not my turn for you to lecture me. Yi Xiao snorted coldly, and when he raised his hand, a moon-shaped spiritual sword appeared in his hand. The spiritual knife in Yi Xiao's hand was flashing with a faint white light, like a real bright moon. Seeing Yi Xiao and Zhang Shouyong standing face to face, Duan Lingtian and the other 4 retreated, while Ling Kong stood in the distance and watched the fight. Duan Lingtian, I will defeat them one by one, and then collect the debt you owe me. Suddenly, a confident voice of Yuan Li condensed into a voice came to Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian could tell without even turning around that this condensed sound of Yuan Li belonged to Zishang. I'll wait and see. Duan Lingtian responded calmly. This Zishang, with his words, wants to defeat everyone? It seems that the adventure he encountered was not simple. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such strong self-confidence. Duan Lingtian speculated secretly. At the same time, Yi Xiao took action. When Yi Xiao raised his hand, the magic sword in his hand burst into a dazzling milky white luster. It was the Yuan Li surging out of his body, continuously flowing into the magic sword in his hand that was like a bright moon. Not only that, within Yi Xiao's energy, there were also wisps of green energy moving around, which was clearly the artistic conception of wind. Wow! As Yi Xiao took a step forward, the power of heaven and earth surged in the void above his head, and strange phenomena suddenly appeared. The phantoms of 12 ancient horned dragons appeared first. This is a strange phenomenon formed by all the power contained in the Yuan Li of a warrior in the 9th level of the Void Realm activating the power of heaven and earth. Immediately afterwards, the shadows of 7 ancient horned dragons appeared. This is the amplifying power of the 4th grade spiritual sword in Yi Xiao's hand. Finally, the shadow of the 9-headed ancient horned dragon appeared again. The artistic conception of 9 layers of wind. And all this did not stop there. As the spiritual knife in Yi Xiao's hand released a sharp aura, in the void above his head, the shadow of an ancient horned dragon appeared again. The artistic conception of a sword. 2 artistic conceptions. After witnessing the strength displayed by Yi Xiao, the four young talents, including Duan Lingtian, were all surprised. Especially by he, his pupils suddenly shrank. He didn't expect that without realizing it, Yi Xiao had left him behind in terms of strength. This made him feel unwilling. Two more realms of mind. Moreover, one of them is the 9th level of the realm of mind. This Yi Xiao is truly worthy of being the Yi family's greatest genius in the past 100 years. Like Zishang, Yi Xiao has also comprehended 2 realms of artistic conception. It looks like today's ranking match will be very exciting. If Zhang Shouyong hadn't comprehended the 2 realms of mind, this battle would have been a bit of a gamble. Although he comprehended the Earth realm of mind, the Earth realm of mind simply couldn't draw on the power of the Earth in midair. I see that Zhang Shouyong looks very calm. Perhaps he has also grasped the 2 realms of thought. The area around the prison fighting arena became extremely lively. At this moment, Zhang Shouyong and Yi Xiao became the focus of everyone's attention. Most people were shocked by the 2 artistic conceptions that Yi Xiao understood. More people are curious about how Zhang Shouyong will respond. No one wants this to be a duel without suspense. After all, only when the 2 players are evenly matched can they enjoy the show. Yi Xiao, it seems that you haven't been lazy over the years. Looking at the shadows of the 29 ancient horned dragons in the void above Yi Xiao's head, Zhang Shouyong spoke slowly in a calm tone, his face remaining calm from beginning to end. In order to defeat you, I naturally put a lot of effort into improving myself. As Yi Xiao spoke, he flew out as if taking a leisurely stroll in the garden. It seemed slow, but in fact it was fast. In the blink of an eye, he was already not far in front of Zhang Shouyong. And the moment Yi Xiao moved, Zhang Shouyong also took action. Call. When Zhang Shouyong raised his hand, an exquisite wine gourd appeared in his hand. After taking out the wine gourd, Zhang Shouyong put his mouth to the gourd mouth and drank the wine with his head tilted back. This scene left many people around the prison fighting arena speechless. Even if Zhang Shouyong was drunk, he should have at least considered the situation. Didn't he see that his opponent had already made a move? Of course, those who were speechless were almost all representatives and young talents from various dynasties. The people of the Han dynasty were not very surprised. You know, when Zhang Shouyong became famous in the Han dynasty, he had a nickname, known as Zhang Shouyong, who can't be happy without wine. From this we can see how addicted Zhang Shouyong was to alcohol. Therefore, no one in the Han dynasty was surprised that Zhang Shouyong drank in such an occasion. Brother Zhang is really cool and stylish. Seeing this scene, Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Flying stars chasing the moon. Before Zhang Shouyong finished his drink, Yi Xiao had already shouted softly and rushed out in an instant, leaving a trail of afterimages wherever he passed and disappeared after a while. Buzz. The 4th grade spiritual knife in Yi Xiao's hand flew out in an instant, like a bright moon moving rapidly. And behind the bright moon, within the elemental force that drives it, some parts are sparkling with star-like luster, just like stars hanging in the night sky. Flying stars chasing the moon is the martial art that Yi Xiao is performing at this moment. When the bright moon flew out, the stars, which were originally as quiet as virgins, suddenly became as active as mad rabbits, as if they turned into shooting stars, following the bright moon and flying towards Zhang Shouyong. Call. Just as the bright moon was about to pass over Zhang Shouyong's throat, Zhang Shouyong, who was still drinking, took action. He raised his leg and kicked it into the air. Almost at the moment he landed, a huge brick shaped with milky white energy appeared under his feet. Inside the brick, ochre-colored energy permeated, which was clearly the artistic conception of the earth. Bang! Zhang Shouyong stepped down and landed right on the huge brick. In an instant, the brick broke into pieces, and the dense cracks looked like a spider. When Zhang Shouyong used the force to rise into the air, the giant brick shook and exploded instantly, turning into nothingness, completing its mission. Zhang Shouyong, who took advantage of the force, was like a cannonball rising into the sky, easily avoiding Yi Zhao's bright moon chased by the stars. However, Jia Yue did not give up. As if she had eyes, she continued to chase Zhang Shouyong with great momentum and undiminished strength. There is no consumption? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be surprised as he looked at the bright moon, whose majestic energy was still pulsating. Generally speaking, if it is an attack that releases energy, whether it is a spiritual weapon that has left the hand or simply condensed energy, it will be consumed more or less after flying a certain distance. But Yi Zhao's fourth-grade spiritual sword did not consume any energy. What's going on? The scene before him completely piqued Duan Lingtian's curiosity. For a moment, Duan Lingtian looked at him carefully. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Facing the bright moon that was rapidly approaching, Zhang Shouyong, who was still pouring wine into his mouth, continued to step on the huge bricks that appeared out of thin air under his feet, flew out, and dodged it again and again with difficulty. Buzz, 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 buzz. And that bright moon, as if it never gets tired, kept staring at Zhang Shouyong, and it was getting closer and closer to him. Compared with the speed at which Zhang Shouyong dodged after taking advantage of the force, its speed was obviously faster. I see. While Zhang Shouyong and Jia Yue were playing hide-and-seek, Duan Lingtian was observing from the side. After observing for a while, he finally got the answer. It turns out that the reason why the bright moon has endless energy is because it is borrowing power from the stars that follow it like shadows. The energy among the stars is constantly provided by Yi Zhao. It can be said that as long as Yi Zhao does not actively stop providing Yuanli, as long as the Yuanli in Yi Zhao's body is endless, the power and speed contained in the bright moon, transformed by the spirit, sword will not change in the slightest. What a unique martial art! Duan Lingtian couldn't help but sigh as he watched Yi Zhao strolling leisurely in the air, manipulating the spirit sword with ease. Brother Zhang, haven't you finished drinking yet? When Duan Lingtian looked at Zhang Shouyong, who was still drinking, he was speechless for a moment. The audience seats surrounding the prison fighting arena were completely silent. Some people even began to doze off. He's finished. He's finally finished. Suddenly, someone shouted excitedly. Suddenly, the group of drowsy spectators around the prison fighting arena became alert as if they had been injected with chicken blood and looked up at the sky above the prison fighting arena. At this moment, Zhang Shouyong finally finished drinking and raised his hand to take the wine gourd away from his mouth. Buzz. The bright moon just passed by Zhang Shouyong and cut off a piece of his clothes. Bang. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Zhang Shouyong raised his hand, and the Yuanli in his hand surged, filled with a deep ochre-colored aura, and he slapped it directly at the wine gourd. In an instant, the raging Yuanli and the ninefold Earth Realm artistic conception instantly poured into the wine gourd. The wine gourd shook, a white light flashed, and then Zhang Shouyong swung it up and threw it out. To be precise, it was smashed out. Whoosh. Zhang Shouyong swung the wine gourd and smashed it across the sky, containing extremely powerful force, and met the bright moon transformed from Yi Zhao's fourth-grade spiritual sword, as if he wanted to fight it head-on. At the same time, in the void above Zhang Shouyong's head, first the phantoms of 12 ancient horned dragons appeared, and then the phantoms of 9 ancient horned dragons appeared. Finally, 8 phantoms of ancient horned dragons and 4,000 phantoms of ancient giant elephants appeared. Increased so much power. At once, many sharp-eyed people reacted and exclaimed in surprise. At this moment, the power displayed by Zhang Shouyong completely surpassed Yi Zhao, which was equivalent to the power of 4,000 ancient elephants more than Yi Zhao. Boom. The wine gourd flew through the air and collided with the bright moon that was flying towards Zhang Shouyong again, making a loud noise. Immediately afterwards, strong air waves swept out, turning into gusts of strong wind that swept in all directions. Boom. After the wine gourd and the bright moon collided with each other, they suddenly separated and then collided with each other again, making another loud noise. A third-grade spiritual weapon. It's a third-grade spiritual weapon. Not only is it a third-grade spiritual weapon, but it's also a third-grade spiritual weapon like the one in Miss Tianwu's hand, capable of increasing power by 70%.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.